The Metal API is literally everything that's wrong with Apple as a company. It's a golden emblem of exactly the problem, and I mean, this is every problem that I had with Microsoft back in the day, Apple has made up and done in spades. I hated the proprietary nature of things. I hated the way that they had kept us with this platform lock in, and everything, and how difficult they had made it to switch off of Windows and to go anywhere else, and how we effectively had been left without a voice in a lot of ways about which operating system we happen to use. But the Metal API is, it's another example like the ALEC files of just Apple's insanity and bad engineering practices and everything. I mean, it would be one thing to do the Metal API if Apple had, a broad ecosystem of games available for it and had all the third party developers on their side of the aisle, and effectively our software ran on their platform pretty solidly and everything. That would have been sane. That would have been a sane move for them to make, because then they could actually have a monopoly over you know gamers and everything, and we would have been trapped on their side of the equation instead of on the Windows side of the equation. But it's delusional. This is a glorious example of Apple's psychosis and just bad decision making as a company broadly, because they're so wed to this proprietary, nature of things, and so dead set against open source development and everything, and have been since the beginning and everything. They don't want an open system. They want something totally closed and completely incompatible with everything else, because they think that's how they're going to make the most money. But you know Apple would have had a greater chance of me migrating from Windows to Macintosh if they had actually contributed to Vulkan. I'm a segment of the market that's completely unavailable to them and out of reach to them entirely. I'm not even on, the table for them at all. They can't win me. There's nothing they can do to please me short of like literally doing, and attracting the vast majority of third party developers of gaming software to come over to their side of the equation, and they haven't been able to do that. They haven't done enough work to woo the third party developers at all over to their side, and it just creates the same exact thing I hated Microsoft for, which is just this is a closed source proprietary system with DirectX, which effectively means that we're trapped on Windows and can't move over unless somebody does the hard work of actually reverse engineering it and figuring out how to do this and make things more open source. And so nowadays we have Vulkan, and it goes into emulator after emulator after emulator these days, because it, as the API, it saves developers a ton of time to just wrap their code around it, rather than having to replicate what Vulkan has already done, and the work part of that part has already been done. And so now it's just a matter of figuring out how to call that API to use its functions as a developer. You can wrap your code around it and everything in terms of design, and a lot of people have already taught themselves to do that. But Apple decided to go create this whole Metal API structure at everything, because they have to have it proprietary. And the problem with that is that Metal has about as in essence, it winning the format war against DirectX has about as great of a chance of happening as a snowball no greater than 5 inches in diameter would have of surviving a millennium in a fiery hell. Very hot hell. This is the madness that's at work with them as a company. It's an example of Apple, and they're absolutely being wedded to this. We're going to do things our way. That shoots not only themselves, but all of Apple's users in the foot. There's a reason why like gaming and everything is always going to be behind the curve on Apple and their MacBooks. You know, it's always going to be that way. I mean, even if the situation does improve, it's still going to be slightly behind the curve. You know, if you want to be a gamer on the PC, you're better. You know, a PC gamer, you're better. Your best bet is to buy a fucking PC, not an Apple. You know, and keep it compatible. You know, so if you want to play games on the uh, if you want to play games on your computer and everything, your best bet is to literally be on a PC compared to other operating systems. So the uh, hmm, uh, where are the other ones? Oh, they're there too. I see. Is there a raw file? Yes, there is. So down to that one. Shit. Fuck. Hold on. Let me see. It should have saved in here to this folder in particular. So what the fuck? Where did it save? There we go. Well, this is just an example of how, Windows Explorer sucks so much. Extract here. And this as well. What I'm doing right now is, glorious proof of why I am a Windows user and can't stand Mac anything, like the video talked about, why PC guys just can't stand Mac. The rest of the damn Brigadier files, though. Oh, that's why. Because there's no seeds. I see. I'm waiting for the rest of the files to actually be seeded with this rather obscure RPG. Huh, and there's other people trying to find the file. On torrent age. Well, anyways, uh, yeah, I upload this with a VPN that doesn't keep logs, so I'm not really worried about being held accountable for it. But anyways, there's a video that's up, and no problem putting it in my underbar, but it really basically describes why, we are the way that we are. It really nails it. why don't we just watch it together and everything? Because it's
One really crazy thing about the entire computer industry is that the PC Master Race guys really don't like the Mac guys or Macs. And today we're going to bring you the top 5 reasons of why PC guys just absolutely hate Macs all around. Now, one thing I'm going to tell you guys right off the bat is that the mindset of a PC user compared to that of a Mac user is a completely different mindset. For one thing, PC guys, for the main part, are tinkerers. They love to take their computers, change out the parts.
This is me.
Overclock them. They're kind of like the dudes back in the days who, made their Chevys and all their Fords and all their cars. They made them all souped up. That's kind of what a PC user guy is. A Mac guy doesn't like doing any of that stuff at all.
I love it.
A Mac guy wants to buy his computer, not have to do jack diddly doo-doo, just have it work with no thought whatsoever. And it's not that a PC guy doesn't like stability and all that stuff, but a PC guy just likes a lot of flexibility in their life. So let's start out with reason number 5 of why PC guys hate Macs. With Macs, what you buy is what you get. So when you go over to the Genius Bar or whatever, you go to a Mac store to buy a Mac, you cannot change the way the looks are whatsoever. So PC guys like to make their computer very personalized. It's a very, very big thing. PC guys like to make their systems custom, make it as different as they can, and when you get a Mac, you can't do that whatsoever. You walk in the store, you've got like one different look, and that's pretty much it. So reason number 5, and it's definitely a big one, is that with a Mac, you get what you buy, and that is what it is. It's not quite, a plain vanilla wrapper, but it's pretty doggone close. And even though Macs aren't ugly, you're still not going to be able to get a custom case or anything like that unless you go old school and try to build yourself a tower using old school parts. Because let's face it, all the new iMacs, the trash can Macs, all of them look pretty identical. There's not a whole lot of choice in what you get. So what you buy, you're pretty much stuck with. Now, reason number 4, and this is another big reason that PC guys really do not like Macs whatsoever, and that is the limited amount of software that you can get, plus the very fact that a lot of PC guys, just let's face it, they pirate a lot of software. They do. Music guys do. They go out and get every plugin that there is. They can hook up their computer. They can try it. If they like it, they can use it. With a Mac, you can do that, but it's very, very limiting. And the amount of software that's out there for a Mac is also very limited. Plus, a lot of times...
What? Oh, no. Yeah? Okay. Okay, I'll go in just a bit.
A lot of the Mac software only works on a Mac. Like if you like Logic for doing music, you're either doing it on a Mac or you're doing it on a Hackintosh. You're not doing it on a PC whatsoever. And it's the same thing with Final Cut and other Mac programs. You fall in love with them if you like working on a Mac, but if you want to work on one on a PC, it just isn't happening. So number 4, come on. Limited amount of software options, limited amount of pirate options, which makes PC guy just be like, hands off. Now, reason number 3, and once again, this is a giant one in the world of PCs, is the ability to upgrade and make your computer and all the components inside of it be exactly what you want. And if you're going to be upgrading parts for a Mac, they're also very expensive. If you ever go online and you try to configure a Mac from the Mac store, as soon as you want to put in a bigger hard drive or some bigger memory, you're paying prices that are so outrageous that just...
Yeah, obscene. It's absolutely obscene how much they cost.
Feels like you're being ripped a new butt by them when you're buying this stuff, and it's just ridiculous. Honestly, It's just kind of crazy. When you buy your Mac, you do have
The only people that buy that shit are the people who don't know better and don't want to know better.
a limited amount of upgrades these days, especially with new iMacs. You can upgrade the memory, and that's pretty much about it. You can't change anything else in it. You can't really change the hard drives. You can use external stuff and that kind of stuff. But as far as upgradability all the way across the board, Macs, let's just face it, they're not very upgradable. Like I said earlier, when you used to have the old towers, they used to have like a tower Mac, those were a lot more upgradable. And why Apple ever stopped making those towers is beyond me, because they were actually the best bet. You had a tower, you could change out some parts, and for musicians and people out there who do a lot of editing and stuff, that was a much better path than buying an iMac or a trash can. So there you go. Upgradability on a Mac, it's expensive, and generally it just plain sucks. Okay, now number 2, this might be number 1 for some people, but number 2 is I have tried to game on a Mac many times with different video cards, different stuff, and even though they can play games okay, let's just face it, Macs aren't really made for gaming. And even though sure, there are a couple of games that'll play on a Mac, they really suck for gaming. Now what's really weird, if you go back in time, back to the very beginning when PCs and Mac were competing, Macs actually had more games at one time than PCs did. Yeah, believe it or not, they did. But now,
oh yeah,
PC is
if you were a hacker back in the day of the Apple II, it was a much better device to own. You know, that's why I've said that it's the only product from them that I'm actually jealous of Apple users about.
Completely dominating the gaming arena. Macs really suck for gaming. You're not going to find anybody out there who's going to be going, "Hey bro, check it out, man. I just bought a Mac to game on, bro. I'm awesome. You see my Mac, dude. Check it out. It's got a built-in graphics card, man, with 4 gigabytes of RAM, and I'm going to kick your butt in gaming." Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've got 64 gigs of RAM.
It just ain't happening, Captain. Ain't happening. Ain't happening. So, no real gaming on a Mac. PCs are where the fun is at.
Yeah.
Now, number 1, and this is pretty much the biggest complaint that I see in forums around the world and everything, and that is the doggone price. The price of an iMac is outrageous.
Yeah.
They start out at about,
Yeah, there's a reason why people like me ended up on the side of the equation that we did, you know, for years and years and years and years. Apple, just the price is way too high for what we want and everything. And I mean, it's true that if you go at like the very base level with like the Mac Mini and everything, you're probably not going to get a bigger bang for your buck on the PC side of the equation at that price level. But, you know, the fact of the matter is that at higher price levels, you can actually get a better bang for your buck, you know, on the PC side of the equation. But you're going to have to pick your own parts and either assemble it yourself, or you've got a membership with Geek Squad to help with any technical issues that you can't solve yourself, which is what we usually pay for, you know, with them and everything. And, you know, just because it's worth it. It's also just an option, you know, even though I can build a PC myself and I know the stuff, it's like, hey, what if I don't want to, you know, what if I'd rather spend my time doing something else while somebody else puts my PC together, you know, and everything. And so that option is always available right then and there to save me time and everything, and let somebody else do the labor that's involved in it, even though I know what I'm doing. I mean, I've built systems mostly to completion and then had them basically do the rest because I couldn't fit my hands in narrow corners in the same way that they could, and their technicians were able to, and everything, and done most of the work, you know, and then handed off the rest to them when I wasn't able to do it myself. And, you know, I'm technically skilled and everything, but, you know, sometimes, you know, the practical realities of, like, trying to jam too many parts into a system and everything, and a water cooler into the, you know, the CPU and everything, having to attach the radiator and everything, there are some pretty narrow turns that you have to put your fingers through, you know, to do that and everything. And, yeah.
Nice 27-inch one, you're going to be looking at probably close to $2,200-$2,300 just to get an entry-level one after tax and stuff. Like I said before, if you try to do any upgrades whatsoever, a Mac is going to be very, very pricey. All the way across the board with that, they're very expensive. The main thing going for a Mac at all, though, is people who use them in business. Because for PC guys, PC guys like to have fun. And like I said at the very beginning of the video, they like to have lots of options. When you've got a super duper high price tag, can't play games, upgradability kind of sucks. I mean, you can't make it look like what you want to, and there's limited amount of software. So for PC guys, it's a no-brainer about why they can't stand Macs. And honestly, for those reasons, for those particular group of people, they are very solid reasons. There are some reasons of why you might want to own a Mac, and I'll make a video about that later. But today, these are the 5 main reasons that the PC Master Race guys just can't stand Macs in any way, shape, or form. And that's just the way it is. I'm Miller. You guys been watching Tech and Tomorrow. Like always, I want to hear your comments down below.
So it's not that I don't know how to build a computer. It's just that sometimes the practical realities are something like, I'm trying to jam too many things into a small space, and Geek Squad is better at doing that than I am, and that's just the reality. Anyways, I got to go to the store, so, I'll start the upload of this one and, see you all later.